In your research, had you interviews with officials of the British government, or ministers, or former ministers, or former officials?
Yes, and that's also from research I conducted previously on a different topic. So having an awareness about things like intelligence security policy and how the British government saw them as well. Yep.
And on specific incidents, was that the overall, the macro, rather than on specific incidents?
So, it would tend to be on the macro, particularly when I was looking like intelligence security, because obviously there'd be things related to particular acts in Parliament they're not allowed to talk about. But in that respect, you could talk about like overall policy and how they saw that linking into events on the ground. So you sometimes did get particular incidents mentioned, although research wouldn't necessarily go looking into that, because I was aware there might be restrictions on what particular officials, past and present, would be able to talk about. But that was important to get the sense, and I'll give you an example from the work I did about the intelligence conflict, that how to understand how particular incidents can occur, and there might not have been oversight in place because there might be policies that said the aim is to fulfil X, but the government wouldn't always keep tabs on that in terms of that's the policy. How people want to implement that generally is up to them, which might lead, particularly in some of the cases with things such as collusion, as an understanding of the structure and culture that might be created around that. But yes, I would have spoken to them. And I'm also carrying forward this research about how the Irish government deals with conflict legacy. We'd be looking to speak further to former representatives of the British state, past and present, and also particularly former British Security Force members. And as I said, because there's more nuance when we're talking about things like amnesties than it would seem. Actually, when you talk to people, there's a lot more division within even the British Army, past and present, about whether that's a good or a bad thing.
You mentioned about the opportunity that we as a committee might have to raise these issues with counterparts in the Welsh and the Scottish Parliament, as well as Westminster. We've done that constantly through the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly, and some of us who are members of this committee are also members of the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly, which comprises members of the Oireachtas, the Stormont, the Northern Ireland Assembly, the British or the Scottish and Welsh Parliaments as well. And we have consistently raised these issues. I met Karen Bradley twice on the Dublin Monaghan bombings. I met Mr Brokenshire twice or three times as well. I raised specific questions at question time in the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly on the absolute scandalous way the British government have consistently ignored the requests, the three requests of a sovereign parliament. As Deputy O'Sullivan said earlier, we passed motions unanimously in this House in 2008, 11 and 16. The British government have ignored those requests. Deputy O'Sullivan, Deputy Sean Crowe, myself met the then Foreign Minister Charlie Flanagan in regard to this issue as well. And we've kept constantly this issue on the agenda. And that's not to say that we will not we will raise it with our counterparts in the Scottish and Welsh Parliaments as well. And again, in Westminster, the way the people have been treated is absolutely appalling. So it is that they ignore the requests of a sovereign parliament. And those were very considered and reasoned motions that a lot of thought went into, that everybody in this House in 2008, 11 and 16 could readily agree to. And it very much encompassed the work of Margaret Justice for the Forgotten and the families whom we liaise with on a constant basis as well. One other ingredient that might be missing, and your presentation today, both Thomas and Margaret, were excellent, absolutely good, and it's very good for the work of the committee. The people are getting older, and when I speak to Anthony O'Reilly, whose sister Geraldine was killed in Belturbet, or speak to some of the victims in the Monaghan families as well, and other families, be it Kevin Nuddo, who's a friend of mine, a brother of the late Seamus, they mention we're all getting older, and there's no sign of any justice being got or us getting the truth. So I think it was always urgent that we had proper investigations and the truth would be told, but it's getting more urgent as every day passes. Memories don't improve either. People are getting older. Health doesn't improve. And again, so many people will talk to us about their utter frustration that nobody's listening. And I have to say, we do it as a committee here, regardless of politics, people of all parties and people of none, re-emphasise every opportunity we get the need to deal with the legacy issues in a proper way. And it's more urgent now than ever. And your presentations today are exceptionally good. And this is a process that we have in this committee of revisiting the legacy issues, having presentations by different individuals and groups. And it's one that we have to keep working on because it's so important. And when one thinks of May 1974, the bleakest, there were many dark days in Ireland during that period, inflicted by paramilitaries from both sides and by some state forces as well, that to think of that day and the British government continue to ignore a request of a parliament is absolutely unacceptable. So it is. So I just want to thank you sincerely for your presentation today, and I'm sure that we'll have the opportunity in the future to engage with you. And I want to welcome Pat and Monica and the other visitors to the public gallery here today through Margaret, Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan, Deputy Sean Crowe, myself, engaged constantly in a group here in this House with the victims of the Dublin Monaghan bombings, and we're all conscious of the victims, of the families of victims in other incidents that were mentioned here today, be it Castleblaney, Dundalk, Seamus Ludlow's death, Geraldine O'Reilly and Paddy Stanley's death in Belturbet in December 1972 as well. When we discuss legacy issues, all those families and all their loved ones and those who are gone from us, we remember and recall all of them in our deliberations. Deputy O'Sullivan.
I was just going to ask about the reaction at the British Ireland Parliamentary Council when you do raise those issues about legacy issues. Would you say, are you getting a positive feeling or?
No.
No.
Ministers, as you know, Deputy O'Sullivan, their ministers answer questions in the format. We get a fudge all the time. That's my only recollection of Mr Brokenshire. I met Karen Bradley separate from the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly now, but previous British Secretaries of State or members of the British Government, they always gave us a fudge on it.
Colleagues from Welsh or on the British, on the Parliamentary Council?
Yeah, there would be some, absolutely, there would be some people who would take a very keen interest and would be very supportive. I couldn't say it was the majority. I know some people, I don't want to misrepresent anybody, but there are some people from all of the assemblies and parliaments who are always supportive, to be quite fair about it.
That's good.